Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan and welcome to the latest episode of our sports show. As you know, we've been premiering and previewing live on air for the past couple of weeks about our special documentary, Global Rugby Legends, My Life in Rugby, where we speak to the top players from the Northern Hemisphere countries, France, England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland and Italy throughout the decades, and the top players from the Southern Hemisphere countries, Argentina, South Africa, New Zealand and Australia throughout the decades. Hear their life story about in rugby from a young age, how it came about, the highs, the lows, the agonies, the ecstasy of the moments in their career. And I'm delighted today to be joined by a truly a Springboks legend, a Rugby World Cup winner in 2007. He was the cornerstone of that Springboks side, very dominated on the opposition's lineouts. In fact, he was named man of the match in that Rugby World Cup final, and he was selected in terms of the candidates for one of the top players of the year in that era as well. He was a cup winner in 2002, 2004, 2009. As the Currie Cup winner, a Super 14 titles in 07, 09 and 10, Tri-Nations in 04 and 09 as well. He's made 131 appearances for South Africa, 35 points as well. He's also played for Toulon in France and Northampton in England, the one and only Victor Matfield. Victor, absolute pleasure to talk to you, sir. And Victor, I do believe growing up that you're a very prominent cricket player and very, very good at cricket as well. And we could be all very much talking about Victor Matfield, the cricket player, rather than Victor Matfield, the rugby player. If everything I hear or say or research is true.
Yes, with the IPL these days, maybe it would have been a better career going in the cricket direction. Yeah, I grew up in a sport crazy house. Both my parents were teachers. My dad were headmaster at the primary school, but he also did the provincial, I don't know what you will call it in Ireland, but the provincial side cricket and rugby at the primary school. He was the coach for them. So, yeah, I grew up with rugby balls, cricket, bats, tennis balls. So I always make the joke that I never had like toys. I never had cars or whatever. I just wanted sporting gear whenever it was my birthday. So yeah, grew up with sports, loved cricket, but probably at school level up till about my second last year, probably cricket sport where I stood out more than rugby. But I mean, both of them was always a big love of mine, and I always loved sport.
And were you a good athlete growing up? I remember Jan de Villiers telling me his mother was an international swimmer, so he was actually very good at swimming, was Jan. In terms of you, were you sort of athletic-wise? Joel Stransky told me very good at football in terms of soccer and stuff like that. For you, was it just cricket and rugby were the two main drives or goals and passions of Victor Matfield?
Well, at primary school, like I said, I did everything. So I played tennis. I was a provincial swimmer, provincial athlete. I think at age 12, I was second in SA with shot put in South Africa as well. And then, yeah, high school, I started just focusing on the rugby and cricket. Did a little bit of athletics, but yeah, stopped the tennis, stopped the swimming, and focused on those two sports.
And I suppose, Victor, growing up academically wise, in terms of your household, I don't know if you had many brothers or sisters that were good at sports as well. In terms of your parents, what did they want you to pursue? They want you to go down the field in business or marketing? Did you want to be a doctor or be involved in the guard, police, or what was the aspirations? Obviously, rugby was a love of yours and a passion at cricket, but did they obviously feel that follow your dream, son, or was it, listen, you need to be grounded, you need to, this is a happens for you, but you need to have an acumen, a sort of working professional job outside of it?
Yeah, so my dad and my mum were always very hard on me on my academics as well, so I did pretty good at schools. the thing I always tell people when they ask me is things that people don't know about me is that I was the top achiever in maths at school in matric in my old school. So yeah, so that was very important to me. So when I got the bursary to go to Tikkies and I got the contract from the Blue Bulls back then, my parents said, yeah, that's all right, but that's a hobby. So that we can use that to go study. So yeah, I went to Tikkies to go study BCom accountings. First 2 years did pretty well, but then in the third year, I started playing for the Blue Bulls senior team, played SA at 21 and everything. And then by myself, without telling my parents, I didn't study at all. I was still at varsity, but I didn't go to one class. I didn't write one exam. Just stayed in the hostel and played rugby. So yeah, they weren't very happy, but yeah, later on they said, yeah, well, I did work very hard at rugby, so they understand. But yeah, they thought I would go into accountings as well.
And Victor, when did you feel that rugby was taking off? When you was it the Blue Bulls and the Currie Cup, the 54 appearances, where you just think to yourself, right, I want to be a professional rugby player in South Africa. If I achieve that, I'll be happy out. Was there ever aspirations to go further, to keep developing, keep sort of climbing that ladder? If you had been a club player with Blue Bulls or been in the Super Rugby with the Bulls themselves, would you have been happy out if to have that sort of career? Or was all aspirations, I want more, I want more, I want more?
Yeah, it's difficult. Like I said, you go with how things go. So I went to varsity to go study, actually. Yeah, the rugby paid for my studies and everything. And then things just started developing actually pretty quickly. I mean, I played for the Blue Bulls under 21 teams for 3 years. Probably the most capped under 21 player for the Blue Bulls as well. Then I played East under 21s for 2 years. And then in my third year as a junior, I started playing for the senior team. And I still tell people, I think in my third year, still at varsity, I earned more than what my dad earned as a schoolmaster in South Africa. So I think it quickly changed my mind. And because of the playing for the SA under 21 sides for 2 years, I mean, at the under 21 tournament, I also got the forward of the tournament trophy. So I thought, this is an opportunity. Let me go full out for this. And then I actually left the Blue Bulls. I went to a smaller union to Griquas in South Africa because Crane was the number one choice at the Blue Bulls at that stage. Yeah, and I became a Springbok out of Griquas. And then I came back to my beloved Blue Bulls. And yeah, we achieved amazing things with the Blue Bulls in the next 15 years.
And I suppose, Victor, you propelled yourself onto a test series then, obviously, with those performances for the Blue Bulls in terms of Italy. And you made your, in terms of travelling, in terms of Northern Hemisphere, and you made your debut versus Italy in the 30th of June 2001. What was that like for you and obviously your parents and family and loved ones at the time? Were you sort of still trying to make your way as a rugby player? Were you sort of struggling sort of financially in terms of that time? Obviously, rugby professionally, were you sort of well versed in terms of that? So was it a big sort of make or break sort of moment, that international sort of debut for you? Did you feel that you would have time to settle into the Springboks setup?
Yeah, I won't say I was struggling. I mean, like I said, as a 21-year-old, I was earning more than my dad as a school teacher in South Africa, schoolmaster, not as teacher. So yeah, things went pretty well. I mean, I was financially pretty stable, even not playing for the Springboks as a 21, 22-year-old kid that doesn't have a lot of extras that he has to pay. So yeah, things was good. I got picked for the Springboks actually earlier. Then I got an injury and I had to pull out. And then, yeah, just after my injury, one of the players got injured and I called. I was actually in PE for a pre-Currie Cup tournament, warm-up tournament for the Currie Cup. And yeah, one of the players got injured and I got called to come join the squad again. And yeah, from there, things went pretty quickly. And yeah, what a great opportunity to play for the Springboks.
And obviously, Victor, things went very fast, as you mentioned. 2000 and when you made your debut against Italy, there was a sort of dare I say, the 2003, 2004, there was a rapid sort of rise. In 2005, you got selected as a five-man list sort of player of the year in terms of that. Did you feel that you were at your peak of your powers then, before heading into that Rugby World Cup in 2007? Did you feel that yourself that, right, you were sustaining injury sort of free, you were coming off a 2005 season where you're sort of listed as probably one of the best in the world in your sort of position? Did you feel everything was sort of clicking for you at that time?
Yeah, I think my first 2-3 years with the Springboks were pretty difficult. I mean, the Springboks didn't do very well. We changed coaches. Jake White came in 2004, and things changed very quickly. I mean, we were a young team. I think I was like in 13 caps and I was sitting in the front row with a team photo. So we were a pretty young team. But Jake put stuff in place for us to focus on winning the World Cup in 2007. I mean, we won the Tri-Nations 2004. I was man in the match in the last game against Australia off that thing. And yeah, I think 2004 was almost a year that was like, okay, you're certainty with the Springboks, you're one of the top locks in world rugby. And from there, things grew. I mean, I had fantastic players around me. A guy like Bakkies Botha came through, Joan Smith, the PSPs, guys that were fantastic at line-out time as well. So that made my job pretty easy, running that line-out at our own ball and contesting. So, yeah, fantastic time. But I still think people always talk about it. 2007 was a fantastic year for myself. But I think roundabout from 2007 to 2011, I would say that was probably my best years.
And obviously, Victor, in terms of that Rugby World Cup in 2007, did you feel everything was sort of clicking? Obviously, you were dominant in opposition sort of line-out. Line-out was your sort of peak sort of area and the sort of pack. You had a ferocious pack, one of the strongest packs in the world at that time. Did you feel maybe that basically it was yourselves and the All Blacks, and if you could get over whichever, if you met the All Blacks and you could get over them, that was the winning World Cup? Did you actually fear any of the Northern Hemisphere sides? At that time, probably Ireland were doing well, and Wales were doing better than England and sort of France. But did you always feel like it would come down to yourselves and probably New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, it was a 4-year plan for us to get to the World Cup. The England game and the pool game was pretty big for us. We've seen it in 2003, our big pool game, and we lost against them. So England were a big game for us. They were the defending champions as well going into the tournament. But I think after we've beaten them, we felt pretty good about the World Cup. But I mean, France at home soil was always going to be a tough one, although they lost that first game against Argentina in the opening game. We always knew that France will be tough as well. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I can remember that. I think it was the Friday night before we played Fiji in the quarterfinals when New Zealand and Australia lost both of them. And it looked like we were winning the World Cup in the hotel. Everyone was cheering and everyone was feeling very happy about that. But I mean, the next day we were almost in trouble against Fiji as well. And then in the final, it was a pretty tough game against England. But the All Blacks are always the team to beat. It doesn't matter when you play them, they're always right up there.
And obviously, Victor, in terms of that, obviously the success you had and winning the Rugby World Cup in 2007 and equaling what was done in 1995, did you feel that that was maybe the right time for you to maybe try out ventures in terms of Northern Hemisphere? Was there lucrative opportunities, offers coming in for you to move to the Northern Hemisphere? Did you just feel yourself, right, I might stay 1 or 2 more years here and then might try and see what it'd be like playing rugby in the Northern Hemisphere?
Yeah, it was a difficult thing. I mean, back then, everyone said once you turn 30, you're close to the end of your career. And I was right there. And I mean, I got the biggest offer in World Rugby from Toulon at that stage to go play there. Although I knew the British Irish Lions were coming to South Africa in 2009 now, and I really wanted to play in that. I thought, let me go have a look at what it's like in Toulon. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I played with fantastic players. I played with George Cregan, Anton Oliver, Andrew Mertens, Tano Manga was our coach. And it was just unbelievable. Dan Luger on the wing. So it was a great experience. But for me, I wanted more. I wanted to play for the Springboks. I wanted to play British Irish Lions. I wanted to play another World Cup because I felt like I was in the prime of my career. So I enjoyed the 6 months, but I always had that burning desire to go back to South Africa because we weren't allowed to play for the Springboks if we didn't play in South Africa. So, yeah, I had the opportunity to sign on for another 3 years with Toulon, but I decided to come back and to play for the Boks in the series against the British Irish Lions and, yeah, to play a few more World Cups after that.
And obviously, would you feel your career would have been embellished if you hadn't got the opportunity to represent your country against the British Irish Lions? Would you felt something is missing? Because those battles are bestowed in history, because the British and Irish Lions tour comes maybe every 3 or 4 years. It might come to New Zealand, might come to South Africa. There's many South African players that haven't played against great players that haven't played against the British and Irish Lions. But that's something you said to yourself, I want this on my resume. I want to know that I went toe-to-toe with the Lions.
No, I think any great Springboks wants to say, listen, I played against the British and Irish Lions. So, yeah, I really wanted to do it. It was a difficult decision because when you get to that age, all of a sudden you think about your family and you think about your future after rugby, providing for your family. And I mean, I came back, probably got a third of what I got paid in Toulon to come back to play for South Africa. But yeah, the hunger was just so big, and I wanted to play against the British Irish Lions, and I wanted to play more for the Springboks as well. Back then, I was just over 50 tests for the Springboks, and I mean, I played even double what I've played up till then once I came back to South Africa.
And Victor, I know it's an awful thing that players don't like to talk about, but injuries, and some injuries have dogged your career, and you've got some bad injuries as well, but you've recovered from some really nasty injuries. Do you think maybe your physique, your body height and your mass and you're a big, powerful man helped your body to recover that bit more? Because you had some real bad injuries throughout your career as well.
I didn't really have too bad. I mean, I think the longest I was out of the game was 8 weeks. So I was very fortunate never to have like a 6 months or a 9 months injury. And I always tried to keep fit. I mean, when I started playing for the Springboks, I was about 120 kgs. I came down to about 108 kgs, and I played at that weight, probably a bit light for a second row in these days, but I felt very comfortable at that. And whenever you had an injury as well, it was always easier to come back at that weight rather than at 120 kgs. So I think I was very fortunate. Yes, I had 1 or 2 injuries at critical times, but nothing big that I missed like a whole year or whatever. Like I said, 8 weeks was the most. I missed a few games in the World Cup. I mean, in 2011, pulled a hammy in the first game of the tournament, and then in 2015, actually in a Tri Nations game just before the World Cup, I pulled a hammy as well, and then in the World Cup, the same hammy just pulled up a little bit, and I missed another 2 or 3 games. So that was a pity that I missed a few games at the last 2 World Cups. But yeah, I think I was lucky that I didn't have any long time injuries.
And Victor, I'm going to mention an Irish name to you. Probably it's a familiar sort of name. You would have come across him many times in your career, and probably a guy you've great respect for, and I know he's great respect for you, Paul O'Connell. Your sort of memories and battles coming up with Paul, and is he a player that you really admired to the opposition in terms of his leadership and his ability around the pack and the fringes? And did you enjoy your tussles or your memories coming up against Paul O'Connell?
Yeah, I always get the question who was the toughest player I ever played against, and yeah, Paul was always the name that come up. I think at line-out time, especially, he was the one guy that really challenged me when it came to line-out time, especially after Gert Small went over from the box after 2007 and joined the Irish, because Gert knew me so well. I mean, we spent hours working on line-outs together, and he knew exactly how I thought about the line-out. So it was pretty tough playing against Paul once Gert was there as his right-hand man. But as well, it wasn't just at line-out time. I mean, his captaincy for Ireland, the man he was off the field was unbelievable. And I mean, his work rate, his physicality, he just had everything. So, yeah, definitely my toughest opponent I ever played against.
And I suppose, Victor Mayfield, if you looked in the mirror now and you saw the rugby player looking back towards you, and you were able to look into that time machine and see that career you had, how would you summarise Victor Mayfield, the rugby player, in 2 sentences? How would you describe him in terms of his journey in rugby?
Oh, very blessed, because I didn't have any injuries, and also very fortunate to had the opportunity to have coaches to allow me to almost change the way that lineouts were done. I always tell people, when I started, the hooker or the scrum half would call where they throw in the line out, then the lock will call back. Does he want a quick ball, a lob ball, or a straight up ball? And yeah, I got the opportunity under Swayze de Bruin, then Harry Viljoen, and then Jake White, Heineken Meyer, to give me the opportunity to run the line out and to change things the way that it's been done before. And I think that made a big impact. And these days, everyone is doing it like that. So, yeah, it gave me a great opportunity.
Victor Mayfield, an absolute honour to talk to you, sir. Probably one of the greatest players in your position in Rugby World Cup, a Rugby World Cup winner in 2007. As we said, multiple Currie Cup success, Super 14, named the man of the match in the Rugby World Cup final, 2005, selected in the 5-man list of Player of the Year. Made over 131 appearances for South Africa, 35 appearances, played against the British and Irish and Lions. A really thorough sort of career. Victor Mayfield, an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I know you still have ambitions with the cricket, and hopefully we'll be talking to you in a few years' time, talking about still very much Victor Mayfield, the rugby player and a recurring aspiring cricketer.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Cheers.
Have a good night, Victor. Take care.